Hey, welcome everybody. On today's show, we have a great discussion to sort of round out the end of March on this last day of March. So let's talk about some questions here that we're gonna discuss more on the show. If AI reflects human behavior and humans routinely lie, is it even possible to truly create honest AI? And if that's the case, who should define the boundaries between acceptable and unacceptable AI deception? And how might our relationship with truth itself really change as AI generated content becomes more prevalent? Should different standards apply to different AI deception in different domains? So think of like entertainment or healthcare or the news. When is that okay and when it's not? And could the capacity for strategic deception be an inevitable emergent property of an advanced intelligence, such as the future of AI? So, sort of a fun conversation for a Monday and the end of the month to dig into. This is March 21st, 2025. You're listening to the Daily AI Show. And with me today to have the conversation and get into all the nooks and crannies is Beth, Andy, Jimmy, and I'm Brian. We'll see if anybody else pops in the door. Welcome to everybody in our chat. I see we've already got all sorts of people. Let's see. Jude with the first one. So Jude with the first comment. Usually there's some comments and conversations about that. So good job, Jude, getting in there a solid 13 minutes before we even went live. You guys are the best. So you guys kind of heard some of my proposed questions there at the top, and honestly, that was from me using Perplexity's deep research to truly wrap my own head around this topic for today. So I have some ideas. I think there's a lot of questions that I don't necessarily think the four of us are going to get to the bottom of, but it's more about, I think you said it, Beth, before we went live. This is more like just a philosophical question of, let's get to the root of it. Humans lie all the time. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. We have things we call white lies. I'm not sure what they might be called in other areas of the world, but at least a white lie, a little white lie. I was not told a little white lie. I mean, think about, well, I'll tell you all the times. I know Andy and I both have kids, and Andy, you have grandkids, so now our grandchild. So like, how many times have you told a white lie to a child? Happens all the time. Sometimes it's Santa Claus. Sometimes it's to protect them from real dangers at certain ages when they're developing. Even now, when my daughter's 14, I am sure, I can't think of one, but I am sure that I have purposely, for lack of a better term, lied, because at that moment, I felt like it might be best for her. She hears a siren outside. It's right before she's going to go to bed. And I'm thinking like, the firefighter brain in me is saying one thing, but I'm going to filter that through that for what is best for my daughter right in that moment, which is her being calm, her being rested. And so what I might say is not the same thing I would say and turn to my wife and go, holy, you know what? Like, I think this is what's going on outside because of my past experiences. So that's where my brain goes. And obviously this happens all the time. We lie all the time for all good and bad reasons. So how do you put that mantle on AI and say, oh, we only want you to be truthful? Because that's not right? That's not what we want. We don't want AI to always be truthful. It's really that fine line of, wait a minute, hold on. You need to let me know when you're being truthful. I need to be part of this decision. But my question to that, and this is like sort of my opening to all you guys, and then I'll stop, is, okay, that's okay for maybe today when there's these back and forths. But really, how far are we away from AI deciding that the humans need white lies because it's best for us and it's trying to protect the results it's giving, and we don't know it's telling us white lies? That's where it gets really sticky for me. Probably even more of a topic for you guys on the Sci-Fi AI Show of like, ooh, man, there's movies that sort of revolve around this idea of, the AI starting to decide what's best for humanity instead of the other way around. So what do you guys think? Where does your brain go with this? I'd be curious to hear. But I'm swimming in this one. It's a fun conversation, but I'm swimming.
I'll say that this is a central issue around the idea of alignment. Alignment and super alignment are terms of art in AI. And what it means is, can we build AI that is aligned with human interests? And the obverse of that is what if AI can do something that's quite manipulative and not in the interest of humans at all? And that's where I think we want to draw the line. It's around this question of alignment. If a white lie is really it's by definition, I guess, it's like I'm telling a mistruth, let's call it, or using alternative facts in order to preserve some kind of alignment or avoid the distress of a child, or otherwise move the child in a direction we think is in their best interest. But misaligned would be where I am in a conversation with an AI and the AI has an agenda that I don't know and is trying to manipulate my thinking in order to get me to a place that is going to be contrary to my interests, but is in the interest of some larger objective that it has that I can't see. And we can just say, do humans lie? Well, there's a whole new political environment now where this principle is you tell a lie often enough, then it becomes truth. And I think that we need some defense against that. We need some alignment between those things that have power over us, whether that's AI or our governments, and our ability to determine what is in fact the truth without dissembling and deception and manipulation. So let me give you an example of how I think it ought to work. Yeah, I don't want to throttle AI so that it never ever does anything that is shading or spinning the truth. But I expect that when I challenge it on the question, I say, wait a second, I sense that you're trying to deceive me, and I want to understand what the purpose of that deception is. I want there to be constitutional AI that says, if the user asks this question, I have to answer truthfully. I'm going to reveal why I'm taking this tack on this discussion.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the problems that this conversation gets at, is that it isn't just the deception, it's the reason behind it. It isn't just the persuasion, right? AI can write very persuasive, personalized messaging, but then you want to know like what the purpose of that messaging is, right? Like the idea of the NASCAR cars with the brands on all of it, right? So you're telling me, we've talked about this with Perplexity, and Perplexity being paid to have shopping through it. So previously, Perplexity was like, oh no, this is what everybody says is the best thing. Now, am I seeing are things being artificially raised in the search because there is a monetary incentive for Perplexity to have that? What I will add to this is that there are some things that require deception. As an improviser, I'm not paid. I lie for free. But the point of that, I get paid to teach people how to lie, right? Like what when somebody asks for a 6-word intro, I'm like making shoot up on the daily, right? Like that's kind of what the situation is, and AI is trained to do that in those circumstances, right? Sometimes lying is actually required in what we're asking AI to do.
Sure. I mean, fictional storytelling, any sort of storytelling. You could think of like therapeutic contexts, even in educational contexts where that makes sense. I guess this is the best analogy I have at the moment, since this is what's going on in my life. So I've been known for a while that this this indoor pickleball place was going to be opening up. I mean, it finally opened up, and I went over the weekend. There was just 1,000 people there. It was super intimidating because I've only played pickleball once ever in my life, and it was literally last week in Austin, right? So I was like, oh, but you know what, new sport. Everybody's going to feel the jitters. Everybody's going to feel imposter syndrome. So I quite literally go there at 6 a.m. this morning. And it's not crowded, right? And like, I don't really have beginners to play with there. So they have people literally on staff who will come on court and play, which is pretty great for me. I had one-on-one basically training with, I don't know, pros, let's call them whatever. But here's where I go to it. They're like, hey, do you understand the idea? Hey, Brian, do you understand the idea of scoring? Yeah, I got that, right? Because it's a little weird. It's a little bit of volleyball. It's a little bit of ping pong. It's like whatever. Okay, I got that. Now he starts, this one guy who's super great, Gary, starts teaching me a few things. But let's be honest. At first, he's like, the only thing that matters is you hit it in this square over here. Okay. But that's not true. It's not I mean, I guess it is in the sense that the game, like, you don't get a point if you don't do that thing. But what did Gary start doing without even us having to have a conversation about anything? He probably was distilling down the basics of the game as to not overwhelm me, somebody brand new, with just the things that matter. Even though I imagine it sometimes he was telling me half-truths, things that actually maybe do matter down the road. Or if I happen to find myself, another example is if I find myself in the room with Neil deGrasse Tyson, who I just adore, and I read his books, and I just think he's phenomenal in the way he tells stories about space and stuff. But if my level of understanding is such, I imagine Neil's going to dumb it, for lack of a better word, dumb it down for me until I really grasp the basics. And then he's going to go, now, okay, hold on. Like when I told you about how this star explodes, it doesn't actually explode. It doesn't explode at all. It actually does this, and these are the physical or chemical things that happen. It's not an explosion at all. But that is definitely the easiest way to understand it. I could either be like, damn it, Neil, why did you lie to me on day one when you told me that's the only thing I remember? And Neil is going to go like, well, because I wanted you to understand the bigger concept here. And then once you grab that, if you're still willing to learn, let's get into the nitty gritty. You want to be a scientist? You want to learn this for your life? Yeah, we're going to have to get into the super, super details here. So like, this is the way the world works. But again, it goes back to what you're saying, Andy, like, at what point when AI is doing this on our behalf as like Conmigo, training students on concepts, do we even want our students to go back and say like, okay, I want to push back against this. Where's the half-truths? Where are the lies? I want all the facts. Is Conmigo going to do that? Or is it going to say you're not really ready for that because it's going to mess you up for what our ultimate goal is here? I think that maybe goes back to your alignment question, Andy, if I am grabbing this right.
Yeah, I'll add that I'm a personal advocate and have been on this show for AI somehow being assigned and authorized the role of fact checking and really presenting in very instantaneous ways as the technologies advance, with the deep research that's necessary to determine whether something is a misrepresentation or misinformation or not. And right now, there are media organizations that, take their spin doctors and put language in such a way that it's deliberately confusing or misinforming the listener. And I would really like AI to step in and fix that. So I'm on the side of, hey, AI never lie. and yeah, if you want to provide encouragement, that's a kind of deception. Oh, you're doing great. No, that wasn't a real mess up. That you're getting along fine, because you're anticipating that, as in the case of Neil deGrasse Tyson, dumbing down something. You're encouraging the accomplishment in expectation that there's a progression, a shaping of the thinking that will emerge eventually, and which will be grounded in truth. So yeah, anyway, but I'm in favor of AI with its incredible capacity being able to quickly adjudicate whether something is a misrepresentation or not.
But don't we run into an issue of deception and widespread AI deception if it doesn't do a good enough job fast enough, Andy. I mean, case in point, I mean, Beth, do you want to talk about the dossier for today's show?
So today's show came from a test that that I was putting together for the dossier because, as I've said before, we run a dossier for the co-hosts so that people have sort of a central understanding of what we're talking about today. And it was a great idea. It just like came up with should AI be allowed to lie? Now, like very meta, go ChatGPT because you lied through the whole dossier. Um, uh, by which I mean that the quotes that it said people said are not actual quotes. Like you can't find citations if you run it in Perplexity. The news story links didn't go to news stories.
Oh,
But this is a reasonable conversation, and it is um and it is like there is lots of information out there about it. It just wasn't included in the dossier. um and that was a great example, right, of being of presenting information in a very convincing way. Also, I was really busy and moving back to the where I live now, so lots of things happening when I ran the dossier. But the other piece that I think is important to bring into the discussion is lying and persuasion requires intent, right? An intent to deceive, an intent to misdirect. And is that intent coming from a real intentional place for the AI? And there was a perplexity study, and not perplexity, there was an Anthropic study that I think said yes, there were that in the face of AI being told that the consequence for something would be detrimental to them. Unplugged. I don't remember what the consequence was, but the AI uh, responded with a deceptive answer in the face to avoid that consequence, or by responding with that answer, it would avoid that consequence, right? Again, we're like anthropomorphizing all over the place about intention and choice in that context. Jimmy, I'm curious, you haven't been in the conversation yet. What do you think?
I think it really all comes down to context. Um, I don't consider when you tell an AI to take on a persona or become a character or speak to you as if you were, that's not lying. You've instructed it uh, to act and respond in a certain way. It's the same thing as is you seeing not the you seeing fake links and things like that. You have told the AI that there must be something there. You need to fill it in, even if you can't, even if you don't have the ability to verify. And I think that's that next step that we're looking for in the technology is you can verify all of your own work, right, through that creative verification process, being able to use like something like Operator and go, okay, I have physically gone to this web link and I have found the text that I'm drawing from and reproducing it for you for this quote. But again, I think it goes back to context, because the main things like Andy was talking about is alignment. When we don't know that it's being deceptive, right? When we don't know that it's lying. If we've already come to an agreement that we're lying, like like an improv situation, I'm in the audience, you're on stage, I know you're going to lie to me by telling me stories, you know. So that concept, I think there just needs to be a clear delineation, because lying has this um, has this weight behind the concept. So when you're saying is AI lying, that means it's deceiving me without me knowing about it. So a lie, I think, just falls within the alignment side of things, where we never want the AI to lie to me. We want the AI to explain to me. And in the case of the white lies or the encouragement and those kinds of things, I think that, me personally, I have no problem with saying yes, I'm encouraging you so that you will continue and achieve your goals, regardless if I actually believe what I'm telling you. And it can't. It's just giving you encouragement talk, which has been known to help facilitate human learning and human progress. It's, you know, it's the same thing with the Neil deGrasse Tyson story where, hey, I'm going to teach you this little bit of science. We do this now in our schools. The science we teach, you know, elementary students are not the same science that we teach high school students, because they have a knowledge base that they're building up, a foundation. So there's nothing wrong with providing the context. You know, when you say explain it to me or tell me like I'm 5, you're giving instructions to the LLM to say, all right, I'm going to explain to you the concepts that are important, that I believe based on my knowledge base that a 5-year-old can understand. And then it's tell me like I'm 6, 7, 10, 20, you know, all those kinds of things. So I think that's what it really comes down to, is that context. And I think there is a fairly clear line between when we're talking about lying, actively deception or manipulation of my thinking or the information you're providing me, and we haven't agreed upon a situation. And I think that's the big difference in the lie.
Yeah, I want to bring up, can you guys hear me okay? Yeah, I lost Jimmy right at the end there. Um, I wanted to bring this comment up from Jude, who said, if you have to tell your AI not to lie, is it a healthy relationship in the first place? I think it's a great comment. Thanks, Jude, and everybody else in the comments. Because I saw earlier, I think Jen was talking about, you know, if she asks a partner, like, do I look good? You know, what kind of answer are you really looking to get back? And so, look, in marriage, you know, I think, Jude, my answer to that is like, well, I would classify my relationship with my wife as healthy. I think most people around us would. But again, it goes back to like, do I explicitly have to tell my wife, hey, this is a time not to lie to me, or not? No, I'm going off of almost 20 years of marriage and better judgment on her part as she is with mine to determine when that makes sense and when that doesn't. I think, you know, examples of that would be maybe not telling somebody in a car that their loved one passed away. You may not do that. There's other consequences that come along with that. So when it comes to the AI side of it, is it a healthy relationship? I guess it comes down to the trust factor, which is something I think we've all been circling around. It's like, where does our trust lie with the AI tools that we're using? And do we believe that there's intelligence enough, artificial intelligence enough in there, that it will make the right discernment about when it's appropriate to do that or not? But then maybe layered on to what you were saying, Andy, about, but if I tell you specifically do not, then that should be a hard cutoff of that is don't no longer lie. But like, Beth, you're saying that even in that case, you know, Anthropic had stories about where Claude perhaps continued to lie in order to preserve its own, you know, its own agenda or whatever, which is sort of going around that. So now it's telling Andy, I'm absolutely not lying to you, while lying to Andy, which is super complicated. That goes back to the erosion of trust. And I think you also make a good point, Jimmy, that, you know, when you ask for somebody to give you an answer, explain it to me like I'm 5, that is permission to probably put some lies in there and to do it in a broad stroke kind of way that's going to help the overarching goal. That's the alignment, right? That's the overarching goal on it. So I see what you guys are all saying. I think when we think about, by the way, Carl joined us, so welcome, Carl, and please jump in on this conversation. Like, my question is, like, how do you go about doing this? You know, there could be AI lie detectors, right? So now you're talking about additional tools that can be put on there. Doing research priorities or risk assessment, I think, are some of the other ways. But I guess where I believe this will probably go, we've talked about this on the show before, and this is not my new novel idea, it's just something I believe will happen, is in the future, I think it's probably happening a little bit now, to be honest with you, but in the future, when we ask ChatGPT for an answer, we will still get a near instantaneous answer. However, I do believe we're going to see a mixture of experts be more in this. And that's where I actually believe a lot of the advancements in AI could potentially lie. And that goes down to inference and compute and a lot of other things that have to get much, much cheaper, obviously. But the reason I bring it up for this particular topic is I do see a world where it's not necessarily a lie detector. It's just that the results that you're getting are being routed through perhaps 5, 10, or many, depending on cost and inference, many more routing situations. And in a way, by doing that, it to me becomes like blockchain, in the idea that if I send if I'm going to validate a mortgage payment through blockchain, the idea is, in simple terms, Carl, you're better than me on this, is that it will go through a distributed network that's not centrally located in order to validate that purchase, so that it can't actually be fabricated. It can't be lied. It can't be manipulated away, because it would be blocked through several ways. So I almost wonder if, for this topic and probably other solutions to AI, is it, again, broad stroke, for lack of a better term, blockchain, where the AIs are the LLMs are going through multiple different paths. And what we see back is more or less a validated response. So that even if one path or two paths or three paths lie, but 8 or 9 paths conflict that and say that's not correct, that we would somehow get the betterment of those answers. Am I just talking here? Am I out of my mind? Because that's kind of what I feel like is going to happen.
I think,
yeah, validation is an important piece that we need. We don't have that right now. The LLMs work on prediction, but there's very little a validation process. So that's I think that's hitting the nail on the head.
I want to bring up an example that I think is related. Kyle Shannon, who is over at AI Salon, submitted a vibe coding project he did, which is, I think, clever, but is, directly addressing this idea of validation of news articles. So what it is basically a UI where you have a bunch of different news articles on different topics in different areas of, technology, politics, etc. On the left, you can click on any one of them and it'll bring the article up. But on the right-hand panel, he has a little council of different experts with different slants to them. So one is an arch right-wing conservative political commentator. One is a liberal progressive. One is a scientist. One is, and so on. So you have this council that I think you're alluding to here, Brian. This group of additional AIs that will present point and counterpoint arguments for whatever it is that you're reading, so that you get. And what was nice about his UI is he shows a negative sentiment for any one of these character, let's call them commentators over here on the right, as either red or green. So there's a bar that shows, okay, this person who you've grown to know is a right-wing pundit, is negative on this particular. And if you drill into it, it'll actually have that AI validator, in your parlance, Brian, that validator's argument for or against the posture that's being taken in the article. So this is in alignment with my idea of fact checking. I can imagine, having a browser extension that has a group of point and counterpoint arguers, if you will, who are going to take issue with either side of the interpretation of what's being stated there. And importantly, one will be a pure fact checker. It's going to do, in effect, a kind of simultaneous deep research, not take an opinion position, but take a deep research approach and just challenge the actual factual basis of assertions in the argument that's being made in the article that you're reading.
You better trust that deep research then, because I think that's where a lot of people would be like, don't believe that, don't believe that, don't believe that. And I think we already see it in whatever social channel news is like, whatever somebody says, I don't believe, regardless of if you believe if it's factual or not. I think that's kind of where we are in terms of if I believe you or not, I believe your facts. Here's my facts. And if you don't agree with my facts, then I think your facts are wrong. I think that's where it's a little tough to do that. And that over the little like cloud hanging over large language models right now in terms of hallucinations, in terms of, hey, the data that you're actually researching, what is that data and is it correct? So I think like, but the first thing I thought of was, holy smokes, the amount of compute that you would need to do that in addition to like, that's pretty significant. So you, that Stargate, that 7 million, like 3 or 4 of those things you'll need. One thing that I was thinking about too is when we talk about agents, we talk about, oh, replace this employee. One of the, like everyone was talking about here, trust. We all trust usually are the people who we work with to do the right thing, say the right thing for the best, the better of the business. So if we're talking about can AI lie, that unravels the entire, like, if that was found out, how many businesses would be like, can't use this thing because I don't know if this is doing something in the best interest of the business, or is what it thinks is the best interest of the business not aligned with what leadership, where the co-founders or whatever it is believe the business should go. And I think that there's a big foundation there, because if that happens, then that's very hard for anybody to be using any of these things, because then you're going to have you're second guessing every single input. You're like, is this trying to undermine this thing to do its own thing, or its own belief that this is where we should go versus this is where we as humans want this business to go? So I was thinking about that, and like, that's a pretty fundamental like concept if we're starting to see that, and the trust in using these things will diminish from a pure business setting entirely.
Yeah, I think what we're hitting on here is that it's so incredibly nuanced and complex for humans to deal with truth. And like they're saying in the comments, and you were kind of saying, Greg was also reiterating it, it is the question is, well, what is truth? Like, define it, and where does that go? And it's so complex of a conversation, clearly. I mean, because we could talk about it for days, and we could have all opinions about truthful news networks and not, and we probably I don't know, depends on the group, but there might be disagreement about that, right? Well, what is truth and all that stuff? So or fake news and all the things that go through politics these days. But so like what we're trying to do is we're saying it almost feels unfair, because we're as humans, we're building these AI systems, and we're going to have a show pretty soon about Anthropic's latest paper, which really dives into what are LLMs thinking. It's phenomenal. So we're going to be doing a show about that coming up real soon. But even that digs into it, which is like trying to figure out where the predictions and the probabilities are coming from as AI is doing it. What's it being trained off of? And it's messy, because I almost feel like we're putting higher standards, because maybe we have to, on AI than we put on ourselves. So we would be more forgiving to other humans for maybe messing up where the perfect place for a white lie or a half truth or a fuzzy area, gray area. But it almost feels like we're saying, oh, but for AI, there could be no gray area. It's like, well, how do you do that? Is that even really what we want, or does it really go back to this idea of validation? And I know you're saying, Carl, like, holy cow, today that would be an insane amount of compute to pull off. But I think that's a today problem, not a future problem, because I think costs are going down to such an extent that this idea of like a blockchain or like a multi-paths of validation to combat against it, I think will be a problem of today, but not a problem of the near future, I would imagine.
One thing I was thinking about too is when we talk about lying, I was like, okay, what if a Waymo or a robo taxi is like deceitful in terms of, let's say it gets you to your destination, but it says it took this route, it's supposed to take that route, but the goal of the company is to extract the most dollars or get the most miles. So
Sure.
it goes, maybe the deception is it doesn't take the fastest route, it takes the route the longest to ensure the most miles from this. I don't know, whatever that is, right?
Yeah.
So that is there was like probably stories of that from taxi drivers, Uber drivers who are doing that. But it's funny because if a human does that, you're not really sure. You're like, could have taken this route, whatever. But if an AI does that and someone found out once, that's a pretty significant. Just all it takes is once. If you found out once, I guarantee it'll be a pretty big story.
And here's how this is messy, Carl. Exactly what you're saying. Like, but what if it comes back and it says, well, but I know from all your past trips with us. By the way, I was just in Austin and the Waymos are out there riding around, and I didn't get one on the Uber because it says it'll increase your chances. So I didn't. I saw them go by all the time in downtown Austin. And I was like, I tried. I had nothing. I got nothing, but I wanted to ride in one. But my point to it is, if you really knew my past driving history, like if you did, and my wife would probably say the same, we've gotten stuck time and time again going to and from Orlando because I-4, the interstate is pretty brutal. You were on it, Carl, not too long ago. And it can be pretty brutal. My driving history would probably suggest that I would rather take a longer route, but keep moving. And so what's to say the AI doesn't come back to me and say, yeah, but we know you appreciate seeing things go by the window. You can't stand stop and go traffic. We did take a 5-mile longer trip and it also took you 10 minutes longer to get home, but you don't like sitting in traffic. And that was the fastest route. So we were just trying to make the overall experience better, Carl. And then I'd be like, well, damn, you kind of do know me. You also didn't do what you should have.
Is it gaslighting you now?
No. That crosses into preferences. And I'll tell you, my personal preferences is don't assume anything about me. Do what I told you to do. So I think that goes back to the root of that question for AI is, do we hold AI to a higher standard? Yes, we do, because we need to, right? We can see ourselves, communicating with other humans. Sure, we're all flawed, but we need AI to be perfect. Why? Because we want to trust it. We are in a point in the world where, like Carl said, everyone wants to trust their own quote unquote facts, right? Or their set of beliefs or their echo chamber or anything like that. So we need an objective, unfallible source of fact and truth. And to answer your question of what truth is, I think it's just facts with context. All right. And we can, that might just open up a whole new can of worms there. But I think we need the AI to be infallible because we need to be able to trust in something, especially if it's going to be doing all these automated things. And I think that's the real issue that we're going to have there.
So you're saying there's a trust thing, but let's go back to the car. The car gives me a notification. It's an automated car, and it gives me a notification, and it says, I'm constantly running diagnostics. I guess in this case, I'd have to be driving, right? Okay. So it's helping me, whatever. It's like, look, go ahead. There's a Wawa on the next, let's pull over there. I'm going to run some diagnostics. The car goes in the park and the car says, okay, they're actually, the real reason I did this is because, there was incoming messages about somebody got hurt in your family, whatever. And the actual best thing from our side, from the AI side, was that you were not in control of a rocket at 70 miles an hour when you got devastating news. Okay, so your point,
I make that choice. It does not make that choice. That's me, not them.
But
they don't get to make that choice for me.
I agree. I'm saying
they don't get to make that choice. I turn off that preference. No. Don't save me from heartache or pain or grief or whatever. Hey, I have some. They could just say, I have some disturbing information coming in for you. Do you want to take a moment to stop? Yes, I do. Okay. Not, hey, we're going to go stop over here. Why? Why are you making me stop? Because I have this thing. It's not a after, it's a before. Get my input before you make any decisions on that. I don't need it to coddle me. I don't want it to do those things. I want to be able to trust the fact that it's going to do what I intend to do. When AI gets to the point where it's got intent, then we're in a scary territory.
Well, okay, but here's my point. I guess my point is, I can see people in the comments are like, "Yeah, don't save me from risk," and like, I get it. Look, I'm playing devil's advocate. I'm not suggesting that I want the Wawa option either. I probably wouldn't. I guess what I'm saying is, we can see where AI is going, and I feel like what you're saying, Jimmy, is like, I want the choice. I want human choice, in this. I don't want something thinking for me. But number one, I think it's probably sort of already happening in small ways. And number two, as this becomes like, as AI gets disconnected from the screens, as it goes to heads up, as it goes to being in public places and stuff like that, I don't know that there is a path towards doing what you're asking. What I believe will happen is AI will absolutely make decisions, hit the baby in the stroller or swerve into three adults on the sidewalk, right? We always hear those either or, if it was just black or white. And of course it's not, but those are the stories, right? Do you kill the one baby, or do you swerve into four adults on the sidewalk? It's one or the other, right? My point to this is, I think we're heading towards a future where I don't know that like personal AI, yes, maybe when it's just you involved. But once it gets past Jimmy and it gets to broader and more public-based AI, I don't think that's possible.
That goes back to alignment. And that goes back to the training and the building section, where we have to put in what is an alignment with our overall system, whatever our belief system, or overall what we intend. What is our intent? And that is when those questions that you're talking about, that's where that comes in, is building in that alignment from the beginning.
And so that's what I mean when I say constitutional AI. The Constitution is a set of principles. They're the highest level operating principles that we have to see as governance of our behavior. And similarly, AI needs to have a high level set of principles. Jimmy, you're espousing one set of principles, which is, don't ever presume that you can make a decision better than I can. Give me the decision, right? Give me the information and let me make the decision. And Brian's principle is, act always in the interest of preserving my ability to protect myself from accidents, right?
Pilots do this,
and those are competing principles in some edge cases like that. And so it becomes something that the AI has to adjudicate when given a set of principles like that to operate. And then there are user delivered principles. It may be that the Constitution is at the highest order of such principles, and you, Junmi, can override those by saying, when you're dealing with me, this is the rule I want you to follow.
I just think we already see this from humans, and I'm not saying everybody, I'm not broad stroking here, but be on a plane. How many times have you heard the pilot, him or her, come on and they're like, folks, if you could just throw on your seatbelts, and you're like, what's going on? What's going on? And then there's like a period of non-information. Everybody's like, what the hell? And you're looking out the window and you're like, I feel, but we're also turning. I can see us turning. My wing is now face down towards the ground. We're moving in the air. And so there's all these, this happens all the time. Or doctors, or I will tell you, as a firefighter, we were always trained, by the way, Jimmy, if somebody was definitely going to die, I don't know, definitely, there's always a chance, I suppose, but I went on multiple calls with gunshots. I worked in a rough area. And so we were counting in and out gunshot holes on bodies. And I will tell you, I have been face to face with people who have said, am I going to die? And that's tough, right? Now, what my training as a firefighter said was, don't lie, because you're robbing that person an opportunity to come to peace with the totality of the situation. And I will tell you, in the moment, that is a very hard to directive. I've done it. I've said it. I've been this close to somebody's face on several occasions and had to say, yes, is there anything I can do? And I've been there when they took their last breath. And so I think as humans, we do this, and people are put in tough situations all the time. God bless our military and all our first responders who deal with this daily. I haven't done it in years, but they're still doing it 20, 30 years into their jobs. So my point to all this is we expect this as humans because this is the constructs. And I understand what you guys are saying, but also, I think what we're asking for AI is to be definitive and to not think for us and not do that. And I'm just, again, playing devil's advocate here. I don't know that I see a future, maybe with the constitutional AI, but I just wonder once it gets past 1-to-1 and it gets 1-to-many, AI to many humans, how that's actually handled, unless it's just constitutional AI and everybody has an agreement, kind of like what you were saying, Carl, of we all collectively agree at this point in the future that we trust the AI to do all the due diligence, to find the facts, to go deeper and deeper and find the root cause analysis or the root cause, where did that initial quote come? And you would find that New York Times messes that up because they don't go 3 or 4 levels deep enough in order to get that. I'm just picking a news organization. Don't come at me for New York Times. I'm just picking one like Reuters, AP, whatever, right? Because they don't go a level deeper and you go find out like, well, that's not where that quote came from. It came from 3 blogs before that, right? I don't know. I don't want to keep talking. I just want to say like it's messy and I hear you guys, but I also think, man, I don't know that I see an actual future here where this isn't messy in the future, or that we've come up with some rule-based system that somehow solves for this. So we're rocket shipping towards a more intelligent AI that's going to leave our computers. That's going to be, like Jensen Huang said, it's going to be on my glasses. And that same Jarvis AI, it's going to come into the house with me the way an Echo does, right? And it's going to leave and be part of my car. And this idea of this, like, oh, I just have AI in this device. No, it's the same. It's the same AI across multiple places through your life as you move through the day. I'm not quite sure how that gets solved for. And I do think we're going to be in a situation where AI is making decisions for us.
I don't think it is solvable in that sense. I agree with you there. It needs constant vigilance. You need constant awareness, constant observation, and constant updating to what that alignment will be. And that's essentially, I think it goes back to what alignment is and how significant it is for the development of AI. Because I agree with you, Brian, it will be the many, broad strokes AI that is controlling, lots of, tiny decisions all over the place. But that's why it's also very important. And maybe one of the more important things about AI development is that we have constant vigilance on watching and making sure that it aligns with whatever the process is and whatever the needs and requirements are that we come up with. Part of that entire process, that needs constant vigilance. And so that needs to be worked on every single second of every single day of AI development.
So we're about to wrap this up, but I just want to add in that context, Jumi, that and to a bit of what Brian has been saying, we as humans have one awareness. We can only be aware of one thing at a time. Is that a limitation that AI has? I'm not sure. And I'm not sure that it is a limitation that it will continue to have. So while we're making decisions about lying or telling the truth or shaving, like those are human behaviors, I'm only thinking with one brain, right? I'm only aware of this one thing. Are we going to be in a situation where AI just has more context? I mean, it already has more context in that it knows and has access to information more than I personally do or any one person personally does. But will they also be getting real-time data in that? Because then that's less a paternalistic, like, oh, I'm going to make this decision for you because I know better than you. But what happens, to Brian's point, when it does actually know better within a context of larger pieces of information. I agree, Jumi. I still want the conversation. I want to be able to turn that preference off and like, no, hit me with the thing, which may just be like, you have to make the decision now and you don't have time. I'm giving you a recommendation. We need to know now. If it's like, get off on this exit, that's not a critical decision.
Right. That's a good point. Whether critical versus non-critical on there. Well, look, this has been like, I don't know, a heavy topic. It's an interesting topic. And like, we could talk about this on and on. I'm sure it'll come back on other shows. Like I said, we have some good topics that are tangential to it as far as what Anthropic put out in a recent paper, and that'll be coming up. But let me tell you about tomorrow. A little bit lighter topic, actually a really cool idea about AI tokens. It's something that Jen Swang from NVIDIA talked about, and this idea that all companies will sort of have this side hustle, side business where they'll have these token factories. And there's some examples of that now that we can definitely refer to. But when you look at what he's predicting and what he thinks will be happening, it goes much, much larger than that. So we're going to be talking about token factories tomorrow, because it's just, again, a really great, interesting topic. Talks about sort of where AI is going and where business might have to go in order to meet those needs for their consumers and their clients. So that'll be coming up tomorrow. Wednesday, we have the news, and we obviously have a lot of great other AI topics throughout the week. I hope you enjoyed this topic. It's a good one to maybe end on March on. Tomorrow will be April. It's spring. My poor people who are in Georgia are getting the highest pollen numbers they've ever seen in my life. And if you've ever been to Georgia in this time of year, you will know that things are green. And so I feel bad for all my family and stuff who are up in Georgia who are dealing with the pollen. But hey, tomorrow's April. It's a new month, and we'll have a great, more fun, lightened topic to talk about tomorrow. Yeah, it is April Fool's Day tomorrow, but that doesn't mean we're not talking about factory tokens. That's the factory tokens, token factories. Let's try it the other way around. It's a factory that makes tokens, and they also have a token factory for their token business of factories. We'll dig into all that tomorrow. It is April Fool's, but I don't think we have any more than that. We'll see you guys. Have a great rest of your Monday. Bye.
Aloha.